Hey now, what is up everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka ReviewKingMB, and I am continuing my 31 days of horror movie reviews. And as you hopefully know, I've been reviewing the original Fright Night movie, so why not also review the remake? Fright Night, the remake, is a 2011 horror film. And the plot is pretty much similar, at least close enough to the original, where we meet Charlie Brewster, this time played by Anton Yelchin. And Charlie, he's this high school kid who used to be best friends with Ed, who they were geeks, they were nerds, they were into this really geeky stuff. But now Charlie wants to be one of the cool kids, or more importantly, he wants to date this really hot chick, Amy, so he kind of drops all of that nerdy stuff. He drops his old friends, and he goes to hang out with them. Everything's going fine for him until some of the high school kids start to go missing, and even his ex-best friend, Ed, goes missing. And that's when Charlie realizes that his next-door neighbor, his new neighbor, Jerry, just might be the reason for that, and he just might be a vampire. Yes, and so Charlie realizes maybe with the help of Mr. Peter Vincent, he can go up against this vampire and stop him once and for all. Now, what I think of the remake of Fright Night is, this is very interesting because this is my second time watching this remake of Fright Night. The first time I watched it was right after it just came out, and I hated the movie. I did. I hated it with a passion. I damned it to hell. And I think it was because of my love for the original movie and how it was just an onslaught of remakes at the time. Hell, it still happens now. And I was just sick of it. I was closed-minded to anything that I loved being remade. But rewatching it now, weirdly enough, I kind of enjoyed it. And I don't know why. I don't know what was so different this time around. I don't know if it's because I just watched the original Fright Night Part 2 and I hated that. That was awful. Or if it's because I'm more open-minded in general about movies. Or maybe it's because in recent years I've seen some of the shittiest, worst horror movies ever. And so now going back and watching a movie that I thought was maybe just as bad, but going to see that it's actually not as bad, there's actually some good stuff in it, I'm a little surprised. It's not perfect, but again, I'm surprised. Let's first talk about Charlie Brewster, the main character, who, like I said, is played by Anton Yelchin. And I really like Anton Yelchin. I do. It's a shame. It's tragic what happened to him just this past year, his death. But him in this movie, I like him and I like this version of Charlie. The writing is very different. The whole him used to being a geek, used to being a nerd and hanging out with these old friends, but then going to high school and thinking he has to change to be cool and get the girl and whatnot. You might say that that's a dick thing to do, and sure, it kind of is. But I will admit, I relate so much to this. When I was younger, I used to really be into geeky stuff or nerdy stuff, and I still am today, but there was a time when I was first going into high school where I felt like I had to change. I felt like I had to be cool, and I did sort of pretend like I didn't like that stuff anymore. I did try to be like the cooler kids, and sure, yeah, you get a lot of friends, you get more attention, but a couple years later, you realize that that's not you, and you realize that old geeky stuff, that is you, and that's what you like. And so I couldn't help but see this version of Charlie and go, wow. When you see a lot of yourself in a character in a movie, you can't help but like this guy, or at least understand him, relate to him. Evil Ed, this time, is played by Christopher Mintz-Plasse, aka McLovin. I'm sorry, but I'll never think of him as anything but McLovin. Or maybe Red Mist from Kick-Ass. But again, I like this new version of Evil Ed because he was Charlie's best friend, and he feels almost rejected and left to the side. Also, he's the one who already knows about vampires. He's the one trying to convince Charlie of vampires. And the only thing that you can really say that's a negative about this character is that he gets taken out so early in the movie that by the time he shows back up as a vampire, you forgot about him. Like, honestly, so much goes on, like, over an hour or so, and then he shows back, and I'm like, oh yeah, Evil Ed. Oh yeah, completely forgot about it. I want to talk about the character Amy Peterson, this time played by Imogen Poots. And I like this actress. I do. I've seen her in a few things. And I like her not just because she's pretty to look at. She is. Let's face it, she's hot. But I like how she's, again, the cool, hot chick in high school that everybody sort of wants to be with. And everybody's pining after her. But she chose to be with the, quote, geeky kid. And there's a moment where she does say, Charlie, I knew you were a geek, but that's not what I care about. I just like you for you. And that's where you go like, okay, there's a little bit more to her than maybe even the original Amy from the original movie. So I like that. I appreciate that. They give her a little bit more to do here. Also, I almost completely didn't realize until rewatching it that Dave Franco plays one of Charlie's new friends. He's almost like a bully, especially to Evil Ed. Now, I should talk about the vampire, Jerry Dandridge, who this time is played by Colin Farrell. And Colin Farrell, he's a good actor. He is. I've never really truly seen him give a bad performance. I think he's a good vampire, convincing vampire. He's creepy when he has to be, a little charming when he wants to be. But the only thing I could say about him and this Jerry is that this Jerry doesn't give a shit. This Jerry is so out in the open with everything that he wants to do. He's so the only thing that's missing is a big neon sign above his house that says vampire with an arrow pointing down. I swear he wants to be caught. He wants to be noticed. It's not like the original Jerry in the original movie, who actually wanted to be left alone. Yeah, he was killing people, but he was doing it discreetly. I know that sounds funny and weird, but it was just like Charlie was the only person that would have and could have noticed who he was and what he was doing. This Jerry, like, there should be more people realizing who he is. There's a moment where Jerry goes over to Charlie's house or he goes in front of his house. I do like the vampire rules here. He goes in front of his house and he's asking him for some beer, and this speech that he gives to him, like, some of the writing for Jerry especially is a little off, a little weird, a little creepy, but like, do you really want to go for that? Another moment where Jerry just kills some kids, like, not in daylight because it can't be in daylight, but it's just before night. So it's early enough in the evening. These kids are in their car in the middle of the street in the neighborhood, and he just, like, kills them in front of anybody. Like, anybody could have seen it. It's so kind of lazy, this Jerry character. But I will admit, this movie does a decent job of trying to make vampires scary again. You almost don't even realize that this is a post-Twilight movie. Like, this movie is in the middle of the Twilight movies, in the middle of this whole craze of trying to make vampires more romantic. And I like that this movie tried to remind you that vampires can be scary as fuck. So that's a good thing. Let's talk about Peter Vincent, this time played by David Tennant. And this Peter Vincent, I still don't like. I don't. It's hard for me not to compare it to the original, sure. And I know that maybe a TV host of a horror-like show is outdated, so they feel like they couldn't do that anymore. So they had to update the character. I get that. But to make him this Chris Angel magician who's out at the Hard Rock Casino and he's doing these magic tricks, I just go, okay, so he's Chris Angel now, but why the fuck would Charlie think to go to him before anybody to try to get help? Like, even he knows that this is just a magic show, that this is just illusion, that there's nothing really truly about real vampires here. It really doesn't make sense why he would go to him. It's a little too convenient, too, that David Tennant's character just so happens to have a past with not only vampires, but the Jerry character specifically. Like, that character, there's a connection there from when he was younger, and I just kind of go like, okay, that's forced, that's contrived. I know they want to make it probably more personal for Peter Vincent. I will say that David Tennant, he is good playing the role, playing this version of Peter Vincent. He's good in it. I just don't love what they did with the Peter Vincent character. But I will admit, as much as maybe I didn't care for that, the different story, I appreciated. I appreciated seeing these characters that I already know from a different story. And I know the original movie was more of a slow build and more of a lot of tension building, and that's what I loved about it. But this movie is a lot more fast-paced, a lot more action-packed, a lot more shit going on, and the characters are all kind of different, and it's one of those situations where sometimes doing different things is bad and it doesn't work. But other times, when the original movie is so good and it works so well, you can't redo that. I get it. You can't just do the same thing over again. You have to make changes. You have to make it different. And I think this movie makes it different enough to where I can sit back and go, okay, I'm enjoying this movie maybe a lot more than I was expecting to. At least the second time around. I will say that the 3D shots are very obvious. I know it was in 3D at the time, but when you watch it in 2D after the fact and stuff is getting thrown at the screen, I hate when movies do that, especially horror movies. It's very cheesy. The CGI is a very big issue. It's one of those things where, come on guys, you guys have a $30 million budget, a lot bigger than most horror movies nowadays, and I just hate the scenes of like when somebody gets shot or there's blood and the blood is CGI, or when you see Jerry in his full pure vampire form and it's completely CGI. It's like those moments take me out of it. I will say the rated R aspect of it, the fact that they didn't go PG-13, they did go full R, and it is bloody for what it is, that I appreciate. And there's a moment where I almost, you can't believe that when Charlie's talking to his mom and he's trying to tell her about Jerry and that something's up with him, and then Jerry's outside the door and he's trying to say that, you know, Charlie broke into his house and he wants to go to the cops about this, and Charlie's almost begging his mom, please believe me, don't trust Jerry, and the mom stops and she says, you know what, go get the fucking cops. She says that to Jerry, and I'm like, holy shit, she just took our main character's side, her own son's side. She believed him over some stranger. Not a lot of horror movies today would do that. They would make the mom seem like a bimbo and not believe her son, and she would have gone and opened the door and invited him in. It would have been so predictable to do that, but they didn't do that. Again, I appreciated it. I found it almost smart how Jerry decides to blow the house up because he can't get invited in. All of that stuff was a bit of a swerve and a bit different. That leads me to the scene where they're being chased by Jerry in the car, and we get a cameo from none other than Chris Sarandon. Yes, the original Jerry from the original movie. And in some ways, that's cool. In some ways, that's awesome that at least these guys maybe we're fans enough of the original to bring the actor back. I like that. I do. I just don't like how they use him. He's literally just a guy that's in his car who gets killed by Colin Farrell. Kind of like a piece of shit. You know, like I just wish they gave him a little bit more maybe of a character, a little bit more to do. Have him be a little stronger and fight him off maybe before he dies. Oh well, there was a time where I would have ranted and raved and shitted all over this, but now, so many years later, I guess I appreciate a halfway decent horror remake when I see one. And Fright Night is a pretty good remake, I have to say. I was wrong. I enjoy this film now. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments below if you've seen the Fright Night remake. What did you think of it? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later! Please won't you save my desires on fire? Sometimes you need a little piece at home on fire. So